I was standing at floor-to-ceiling windows, 30 stories above the Las Vegas Strip, and his hands were unbuttoning my blouse. The lights of the city reflected off the glass like 1,000 watching eyes, and I didn't care who saw. This wasn't me. I'm the girl with spreadsheets and 5-year plans. But that night, I was someone else entirely. My name is Rachel. I'm 31 years old. I live in Denver, and I'm about to tell you something I've never told anyone, not even my closest friends. This is the story of what happened in Vegas and why it almost didn't stay there. Let me back up. 3 months before that night, I'd come out of a relationship that had been slowly dying for over a year. You know the kind, where you're more roommates than lovers, where the passion faded so gradually you didn't even notice until it was completely gone. When we finally ended it, I felt relief more than sadness. My life was my career. I'm a marketing manager for a tech company in Denver, and I'm good at what I do. I live in spreadsheets. I plan campaigns 6 months out. I'm the person who color codes her calendar and never misses a deadline. Control is my comfort zone. Spontaneity makes me anxious. My friends joke that I need to loosen up, have more fun, take risks. I always laugh and change the subject. So when my company sent me to a marketing conference in Las Vegas last October, I wasn't exactly thrilled. 3 days of presentations, networking events, and corporate small talk. Vegas felt wasted on a work trip. I flew in on a Wednesday afternoon, checked into the Bellagio, and spent the next 2.5 days in conference rooms that could have been anywhere in the country. Same PowerPoint presentations, same catered lunch, same forced conversations over coffee breaks. By Friday night, I was exhausted and ready to go home. But my colleagues had other plans. Around 9 that evening, a group of us decided to hit the casino floor before calling it a night. I'm not a gambler, never have been. But I went along because the alternative was sitting alone in my hotel room, and that felt even more depressing. The Bellagio casino was everything you'd expect. Bright lights, the constant electronic symphony of slot machines, the smell of cigarette smoke, and expensive cologne mixing in the air-conditioned atmosphere. We found a blackjack table and settled in. I bought $50 in chips, figuring I'd lose it in 20 minutes and then have an excuse to leave. That's when I saw him. He was sitting 2 seats down from me at the table. Dark hair, dark eyes, perfectly tailored charcoal suit, with the jacket off and the sleeves rolled up. He had this confidence about him, not arrogant, just comfortable in his own skin. When he caught me looking, he smiled. Not a pickup artist smile, just friendly, real. The dealer busted, and we all won that hand. He leaned over and said, underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, zero, underscore, underscore. His voice was deep, with just a hint of a Boston accent. I laughed and said, quote, one. He raised an eyebrow. Quote, two. We played for another 30 minutes. My colleagues gradually drifted away to other tables, other games. But I stayed. He stayed. We started talking between hands. His name was Jake, financial analyst from Boston. Same conference I'd been at. We'd probably walked past each other a dozen times without noticing. He was funny in this dry, understated way. When I lost a hand badly, he'd shake his head and say, that's going to cost you. When he lost, he'd mutter something about the odds being rigged. There was this easy rhythm to our conversation. No awkward pauses, no trying too hard. Around 11, we'd both lost our initial chips and decided we were done. He turned to me and said, can I buy you a drink? Somewhere quieter than this? I should have said no. I should have said I had an early flight, which was true. I should have done what responsible, careful Rachel always does. Instead, I said, quote 5, we ended up at this rooftop bar at the top of the Bellagio. It was one of those places that felt like a secret. Intimate lighting, plush seating, and windows that looked out over the entire strip. At night, Vegas is this glowing neon wonderland. From up there, it looked almost magical. We found a corner table by the windows and ordered drinks. He got whiskey? Neat. I got a dirty martini, which I never drink, but it felt like a Vegas kind of choice. We talked about everything and nothing. Our jobs, our cities, our completely different lives. He told me about growing up in Boston, about his family's restaurant in the North End, about how he'd always thought he'd end up cooking instead of crunching numbers. I told him about Denver, about my mountains, about how I'd moved there for college and never left. The thing about talking to a stranger in Vegas is that there's no history and no future. You can be completely honest because you'll probably never see them again. I told him about my breakup, about feeling stuck in this carefully controlled life I'd built. He told me about his last relationship ending badly, about throwing himself into work to avoid dealing with it. There was this moment where we both just looked at each other and laughed at how similar our stories were. Around 1 in the morning, the conversation shifted. I can't even tell you how it happened. Just that one moment we were talking about work stress, and the next moment, his hand was on the table next to mine, not quite touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat of it. He said, quote, 6. I smiled and said, quote, 7. He leaned in closer, quote, 8. His hand moved to my thigh, just above my knee. Not aggressive, just there. Testing. I put my hand on his neck, feeling the warmth of his skin. We didn't say anything else. We just knew. The walk to the elevator felt like it took forever. His hotel room was 2 floors above mine. We didn't speak in the elevator. Didn't touch. Just stood there with this electricity crackling between us. 2 business people in corporate casual, looking completely normal to anyone else who might have gotten on. But I could feel my heart pounding, could feel every nerve ending alive. When the doors opened on his floor, he held out his hand. I took it. His room was a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 walls. The view was insane. The Bellagio fountains below, the Paris Hotel's Eiffel Tower lit up across the street, the entire strip glowing like a river of light. He didn't turn on the overhead lights, just left the curtains open so the city lights illuminated everything. He poured us both water from the minibar. Then he walked over to where I was standing by the windows and said, I turned to face him. He smiled. I kissed him instead of answering. Here's the thing nobody tells you about those spontaneous, passionate encounters. They're not smooth like in movies. There's fumbling and laughing and moments of awkwardness. But there's also this raw honesty to it. No performance. No trying to be someone you're not. Just 2 people who want each other and aren't overthinking it. He kissed me against those windows, and I didn't care that we were visible to half of Vegas. His hands were in my hair, then on my waist, then unbuttoning my blouse. The city lights reflected off the glass, creating this dreamlike atmosphere where reality felt suspended. I remember thinking, this isn't me. I don't do this. I don't hook up with strangers in hotel rooms. I plan everything. I think through consequences. I make pros and cons lists before making decisions. But standing there with his hands on me and the Vegas Strip glowing below us, I realized something. Maybe this was me. Maybe I'd just been too afraid to let her out. He whispered, "You're incredible." And the way he said it made me believe him. Not a line, not a seduction tactic, just honest appreciation. I pulled him toward the bed and said, "Stop talking." We didn't leave that room until morning. I'm not going to give you explicit details. That's not what this is about. But I will tell you that it was intense in a way I hadn't experienced in years, maybe ever. With my ex, things had become routine, predictable, scheduled even. This was the opposite. This was all instinct and desire, and living completely in the moment. We'd fall asleep for an hour, then wake up and start again. At some point around 4 in the morning, we ordered room service, burgers and fries that we ate in bed, while watching the fountains perform below. He told me about a disastrous first date he'd gone on 6 months ago. I told him about the time I accidentally sent a snarky email about my boss to my boss. We laughed until we couldn't breathe. As the sun started to come up, reality began creeping back in. We both had flights that afternoon. We both had real lives waiting in different cities. Neither of us said it, but we could feel the clock ticking. Around 7, I finally got up to take a shower. When I came out, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, already dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. He looked different in casual clothes, younger, more vulnerable. He said, quote, 14, I sat down next to him. Quote, 15, he turned to look at me. Quote, 16, he didn't finish the sentence. I thought about it, really thought about it. I could give him my number. We could try long distance. We could plan visits and video calls and all the things people do when they want to make something work. But here's what I knew in that moment. What happened in that room was perfect because it was contained. It was a bubble outside of real life. The magic was in the spontaneity, the freedom, the fact that we weren't our normal selves. If we tried to translate it to the real world, it would become something different, something less. He was waiting for me to say something. I said, "Let's exchange numbers. You never know." He smiled, but it was a sad smile. We both knew. We swapped phones and put in our numbers. He walked me to the elevator. In the hallway, with housekeeping carts and business travelers rushing past with rolling suitcases, he pulled me close and kissed me one more time. Not urgent like the night before. Slow, tender, like he was trying to memorize it. When he pulled back, he said, "See you in real life?" I smiled. Maybe. The elevator doors opened. I stepped in. He stayed in the hallway, hands in his pockets, watching me. As the doors closed, he raised one hand in a small wave. I waved back. Then he was gone. I flew home that afternoon and in a daze. Sat in the airport, sat on the plane, stared out the window at the clouds, and couldn't stop replaying the night in my head. Not just the physical stuff, though that was definitely playing on repeat, but the way he'd looked at me, the things we'd talked about, the feeling of being completely unself-conscious for the first time in years. When I got back to Denver, everything looked exactly the same. My apartment, my routine, my carefully organized life. But I felt different. Like I'd left a piece of myself in that hotel room, 30 stories above the strip. Jake texted me 2 days later. Just a simple, "Made it home. Hope you did too." I stared at the message for 20 minutes before responding with something equally casual. He texted again a few days after that. Asked how my week was going. I responded. He sent me a photo of the Boston skyline with the caption, "Not quite as flashy as Vegas." I sent him one back of the Rocky Mountains, but better views. This went on for about a month. Nothing heavy, just friendly check ins. He never pushed for more, never suggested we visit each other. I think he understood the same thing I did. Then one night, he texted, I keep thinking about that night. About you. I stared at my phone for a long time. I could feel the crossroads. I could respond, really respond, and see where it led. Or I could be honest. I wrote back, me too. But I think that's all it should be. A perfect memory. Three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, yeah, you're probably right. After that, the texts stopped. Not dramatically, just gradually. A week would go by, then two. Then I realized it had been a month since I'd heard from him. I didn't reach out either. Here's what I figured out. In the months since Vegas, some experiences aren't meant to become something more. They're meant to be exactly what they are in the moment, pure and complete and perfect, because they exist outside the complications of real life. What Jake and I had was incredible, but it was incredible because it was contained. One night, no past to complicate it, no future to worry about, just us and that hotel room, and the feeling of being completely alive. If we'd tried to turn it into something more, we would have had to figure out logistics and schedules and all the things that make long distance hard. We would have had to integrate our real lives, meet each other's friends, deal with each other's baggage. And maybe it would have worked, but probably it would have slowly killed the magic until we were left with disappointment instead of this perfect memory. I'm not the same person I was before Vegas. I don't mean that in some dramatic, life changing way. I mean that I loosened my grip a little, started saying yes to things that scared me, took a pottery class even though I'm terrible at it, went on a spontaneous road trip with friends, even went on a few dates, though nothing serious yet. The thing about letting yourself be wild just once is that it shows you that you can. That the carefully controlled version of yourself isn't the only version. That sometimes the best moments are the unplanned ones. Do I think about that night? Of course, more often than I probably should. Sometimes I'm falling asleep, and I'll remember the way the city lights looked reflected in those windows. Or I'll catch a whiff of cologne that smells similar to his, and I'm right back there. I wonder if he thinks about it too. I wonder if he's told anyone. I wonder if he's the same person he was or if that night changed him a little too. I haven't been back to Vegas. Part of me wants to. Part of me is afraid to. What if I stayed at the Bellagio again and the memory felt less magical? What if I went to that rooftop bar and it was just another bar? Some places should stay perfect in your memory, untouched by reality. I'll go back eventually. Just not yet. So that's my Vegas story. The one I haven't told my friends, my family, anyone. They know I went to a conference. They know I gambled a little and lost 50 bucks. They don't know about Jake, about that night, about feeling more alive in 8 hours than I had in years. And maybe that's how it should be. Some stories are just for you. Some memories don't need to be shared to be real. Sometimes, what happens in Vegas really does stay in Vegas. Almost.